Next in.
Welcome to Next In, another episode. Now it's March. It definitely feels like March here in Nashville. It's like 66 degrees and sunny, which is amazing. So Mike, which we'll introduce here in a second, Mike from the Boston area, me from Chicago, Shane from Seattle. March 1st typically is not like this, but now all three of us are new transplants here to Nashville. 66 degrees, and it's supposed to be 70 the rest of the week and sunny, which is outrageous. So loving it. Spring has sprung. So I'm Taylor Duncan. I got Shane Schoen. We co-host this Next In podcast. We appreciate everyone listening. If you guys can, subscribe, comment, whatever. Let us know what you think. Tell us how great it is. Tell us that Shane talks too much or something like that. But today we are visited by Mike Audi, which exciting about Mike is we actually, in our last episode, we talked to Brian Moyer, who's head of Nashville Tech Council. He mentioned your company, TIKI, and how excited he is for you guys to move here. So we'll get into that in just a second. Everyone will find out a little bit about Mike's story and transition from the Northeast here to Nashville. But so Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here. And you're right. It's the shortest winter of my entire life. It was
I know,
a month
right?
and a half.
How amazing is it? Just for anyone who's still in Boston or New York or Chicago or Detroit or all of these other cities that are so used to winter going until about May 28th, how awesome is it that like it's March and it's 66 degrees?
I'm very excited for spring. I don't know if I've ever actually had spring. Maybe it was a week.
I know, right? And then it's summer, and then it's quickly like waiting to put the coat and gloves and hat and hate life for about 6 months.
Yeah. Do you have allergies?
Bad allergies. Yes.
Oh, you don't even know yet. You're about to get rocked.
Yeah.
You're about to find out what kind of allergies you really have. So yes, the people in the South complain a lot about the allergies, but I'll take it. 70 degrees early March for the entire week and sunny. I'll take a little bit of sneezing. So Mike, tell us a little bit about your story, just a little of your background for the audience to learn a little bit more about you.
Sure. You want to know about my background or the company we're building or a little of both?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. All right.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Yeah. So, I'm from the Northeast is what I'd say, right? I grew up in upstate New York, and then I went to school in Massachusetts, and I kind of just hung around there building a company for almost 10 years until I very recently left that business and started a whole new business and then raised a little money and brought that whole thing to here in Nashville. So that's how I ended up here in Nashville. I left because ultimately of this crazy idea that I just became obsessed with, and I couldn't not chase it. The idea is so fundamentally simple that we experience every day. The internet is all messed up, right? It's a disaster these days, right? And it feels like we're all being manipulated, exploited, taken advantage of. We have no real semblance of privacy, and it just gets worse and worse every time we turn on a computer. And I was thinking, why can't we just fix this? Right? Like, why can't we just make that whole problem go away with one real simple change? What if we put everybody in charge of their data? What if we just made you the owner of your data, right? It's not a crazy concept. You own all the other things in your life. You own your car. You decide who drives your car. You sell your car. You get paid for your car. But somehow along the way, that doesn't apply to your data. Yet legally, you technically own it, but it's being shared and sold, and you have no idea or any recourse, right? And so why couldn't we just fix that problem, right? And by doing so, it opens up this whole new world, right? It's not just about taking back your data and shutting off privacy. It's about deciding who gets what data and for you getting fairly compensated for it, or we call it control and compensation, right? Because you can't live in a world where you're just like, we're going to shut off all of the data, right? Like, businesses rely on it. They need it. They depend on it. It's part of the value they bring to users, right? It's part of our experience on the internet, but also just in general, right? Like, it's how we build better products and services. So you can't shut off data. Companies are just going to work around that, figure out shadier and creepier things to do to get it. But if you build a marketplace, a entirely different way where the users are the owners of their data, you actually allow people to create a free market where they're the sellers of their data and they decide who can buy it, who can use it, and what they can do with it. And that fills this void of businesses, right? Where there's no longer the creepy aspect, there's no longer the manipulation, the exploitation. It's all driven by users, right? It's all driven by your consent. So we call it control and compensation. And we believe, honestly, it's a very simple way to fix the internet.
So like, how does that work? Is it like I give you, like, obviously cookies still exist, so I'm curious about, like, cookies go away. Is it a cookie driven kind of data share? Is it an opt-in data share? Like, how does that work both now and then in the future when things change here? Ideally, I mean, they say in 6 months cookies are going away, right? So
yeah, and who cares about cookies? Like, I say that a little jokingly because it's just like, that's like the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's really collected on people and used and monetized, right? Cookies are a very, very tiny piece of the puzzle. But the way it works is the app looks like Tinder. So you sign up and you just link your existing accounts, right? So you link your Gmail account, link your Facebook, Spotify, whatever. And we go and scrape the web basically on your behalf and go find all of your data, right? We pull all your data in. We do 3 basic things. We show you what data companies are collecting on you. Then we give you cards that say, hey, swipe left to turn this off, swipe right to get paid for it, right? And you just make choices. You swipe left and right and make choices. And if you do decide to sell some of your data, you get to decide who can buy it and what they can do with it. And if you do, then you get paid, right? It's kind of really that simple. Right. So the app is,
Will it go to the highest bidder? So like if I have a lot of data or a lot of, I don't know if this makes sense, but a lot of followers or I'm on the internet a lot, or for whatever reason in Gmail, I'm getting tons of emails, or I have subscribed to 1,000 e-commerce sites. Therefore, I'm more valuable to Google's algorithm than someone who has signed up to none. So like my 13-year-old son who has a Gmail account, I have a Gmail account, I'm more valuable. I get paid $1, he gets paid 50 cents, or does it work that way or no?
It kind of, and also kind of not, right? So every single one of TIKI's users is anonymous. So it's not based on your identity. It's based on what actions you do or don't do on the internet, right? And that's to preserve both the user's privacy and the buyer's safety, right? Like the vast majority of companies can't be responsible enough to have your data and your identity. So you have to build a way in which they can consume insights around what they need for their business without actually having your data, right? So all our users are anonymous. The system is decentralized, so we don't have any user data. It actually lives all on your phone, and then just the insights are extracted and shared, again, to protect both sides of the equation. But what ultimately happens is you can think of it like Spotify music, right? So think of it like you're the musician and your data is the songs you're creating. And so every time a business looks at or uses your data, you get paid fractions of a penny, right? And so based on if your data is valuable to them, you get paid, you make more money. And if your data is not valuable, no one clicks on it, no one uses it, you don't get paid, right? So it's all driven based on how valuable your data actually is based on how companies actually use it. So maybe you're more valuable than someone else. Maybe you're not. Some of your data is probably worth a lot more than others, right? It's all driven based on market demand, which ultimately is creating a fair market value for your data.
So my assumption then is like you guys are plotting people into subgroups. Those subgroups are allowing companies to be able to target certain information that they might want to get. So like Taylor's, X, Y, and Z age or ethnicity, and we want to be able to market towards people of that demographic, and using that information or some sort of data enrichment set, I can opt in for TIKI data as a business to be able to go, I want to be able to market to these people, but I want insights and information on how to identify my core customer and how I can relate to them potentially, or a million other ways that they could use a data enrichment set.
Yeah, the cool thing about getting data straight from users is it opens up a whole world of ways you can consume and use data that were never even previously possible, right? An easy one that we started with is, let's say you run an email newsletter. It would be really great to know who else is emailing your users and why they're opening those emails more often than your emails, and what the most popular subject lines are and the keywords that drive the highest open rates. And when you talk about this subject, they forward it to more friends, right? You get access to a whole wealth of information that you can use for things, not just targeting, right? Because nobody likes targeted ads, right? How about making your product better? Or how about delivering a better service? Or figuring out, like, you want to make a new product. What's the real market for it? What are people complaining about, and where are they struggling when using your competitors' products? So that way, how do you go and capture a new audience?
So then if, like, let's say like I'm a super influencer or something on like Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, and I have a very specific subset group of people where I have access to that information, but other people don't unless I opt in to be able to share that information. It now allows them to be able to share who their core, customers are. Like, why is my post working and somebody else isn't? And it can be very challenging to just crawl TikTok and go what's working, because there's a lot of assumptions. But if you had 100 power users that are having like a very specific use case, and you can use data where everybody opts in and shares that stuff, you can start using ML or something to run across those sets to truly understand, why is that shit working? Why is it not working? That's actually pretty interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So help me understand again from the stupid consumer standpoint. So it's an app in the iOS and Android Play Store, or just iOS? Or
so we currently have a wait list of users. So it will be on iOS and Android. You have to sign up for our wait list to get into the beta. We had opened it originally, but so many people signed up that we couldn't run a beta with our small team with enough people. I think the wait list cost 135,000 people the other day. Yeah, so a lot of people are very upset about this problem, and so it turns out they're very motivated to either take back control of their privacy or get money for their data. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, so if you go to mytiki.com, you can sign up for the wait list. We're hoping to launch the apps, probably this summer to everybody, and open it up to the full floodgates. We're adding, tens of thousands of people to the beta every month or so.
So it's mytiki.com.
Yep.
So you go there, you sign up, beta set or wait list or whatever, and then hopefully this summer it launches. So now some other questions that pop in my head, because I guess part of it too, it's like it's easy to go and find out maybe social stuff, but this also will crawl into the Gmail and the different emails you get, because that's frankly cookies and everything else is doing it. So if I don't go use Tiki, then my stuff is going to get taken. If I use Tiki, I at least have control over what is seen, or turning it all off so that no one can see it.
Exactly. Yeah. If you don't want to get paid, you don't have to, right? You can just use it to turn it off, right? One of the first things that we mocked up and started building was Facebook by default for a long time used to do facial recognition on pretty much all users. And they used it for auto tagging people's faces, but no one knew, and it was buried in the settings of the settings of the settings. They got sued to high heaven, and recently they changed that. But
creepiest thing was like being suggested, like somebody posted a photo of you and you're like, oh, I don't like that.
Right. So we go through your accounts and we find all this stuff, and we show you a lot of the parts of the app don't even have anything to do with getting paid for your data. It just says, hey, did you know Facebook's tracking your face? Swipe here to turn it off. They say this is what they use it for. This is what it's been known to be used for. And we break it down into normal terms we all understand, right? You don't use we don't use complicated words like machine learning and facial recognition. Just Facebook is tracking your face. They use it to auto tag you in pictures. Would you like to turn it off?
Yeah. Facebook is a creep. Would you like the creep to no longer see you? Yes. Okay, cool. So you're talking to kindergartners. I like that. I appreciate that. So I think this is awesome. Again, this is coming from the last man on the planet who doesn't have a Facebook account, right? So everyone doesn't realize that's probably laughing like, how old are you? I'm 26. But, I've always been, again, a little bit nervous about this. And then they came out with the movie, which I'm guessing you saw, called The Social Network or whatever.
Social Dilemma.
That's what it was. And it really was, I think, eye-opening for a lot of people to recognize, and the great line in it, which is, if the service is free, you're not really the customer, or something like, I forget exactly, but basically,
you're the product.
If the product is free, then you're the product.
Yep.
And it was one of those things that was an eye-opening. Was that part of this journey for you? Was like seeing that, or maybe you knew about it because you worked in the tech space and you understood, your data, including your face from Facebook, is being used, marketed, watched, and everything else, 365.
And to
Yeah.
tag on to that real quick before you even answer, there's even stuff coming out saying that Facebook and Instagram might shut down in Europe because of all of the data protection laws that are coming out. And it's just like, it's no longer economical for us to be able to host our products in Europe if we can't advertise.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the scary reality is that's really just the tip of the iceberg. Even Facebook is, right?
Yeah.
Walgreens has been, I think it was Walgreens. It's either Walgreens or CVS, but they've gotten sued multiple times over the last like 20 years for harvesting prescription data for big data analytics and selling prescription information and things like that. Right. And so they're like, the point is, you are being tracked by thousands, tens of thousands of companies everywhere you go, whether you have Facebook or not. And you have no recourse to do anything about it. Yet, all those companies have put the blame back on you by saying it's your data. And therefore, you've consented. And therefore, whatever you've agreed to is end all be all. And they do whatever they want. But it's so invasive and it permeates so many aspects of your life that are way more detrimental than even just ads. And yet it's yours, which is the weirdest dynamic, right? They're saying like, yeah, we're doing all these things because you agreed to it. So good luck, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that it just doesn't feel right or ethical, as well as it's really not in the best interest of all the businesses that we actually care about, right? The only people who win in this paradigm are the Googles, the Facebooks, the big tech giants who know data, understand data, harvest data, and use it as a business model.
Yeah.
All of the SMBs, all of the businesses we actually care about are suffering because they can't compete, right? Part of Germany's antitrust lawsuit against Google was Google's use of user data to build a monopolistic advantage in search, right? Basically blocking out all competition by harvesting and using user data. So these companies use it to their advantage at the detriment of competition in small businesses and at the detriment of people, right? And so they're the only ones winning, right? And we know how to solve this problem, right? Like a free market solves this problem. It's not, I didn't invent this concept, right? Like we've used this concept for everything everywhere, right? Like that's how you bring competition and fairness and ultimately both sides win when you open up something transparent like that.
Well, yeah,
So
and they do build the best products, right? So I just saw recently, like Google has, it was some 84% or whatever of market share of search, and then there's like a small little bit, or not search, Chrome, sorry, of browsing, right? Of basically being your web browser. And so they're collecting a lot of data, but they do have the best product. It's better than Internet Explorer. It's better. Like I would love to use DuckDuckGo and I have it on my phone. And every time I open it and use it, I get annoyed that it actually doesn't know enough about me to give me good suggestions.
Sure.
And so there is a level, I like that Google is giving me articles I want to read about the Chicago Bears or about the Tennessee Volunteers. But at the same time, then it gets creepy when you're seeing stuff that you really don't want to see and all the other use cases that you've heard of that are really bad and creepy, where they try to manipulate. If you're a football fan, that also must mean that you're X, Y, and Z fan. And so we're going to pump that to you. So there's a balancing act of, and if I'm getting paid for it, like you said, it's mine, it makes sense. Well, where'd you come up with like, how did this, you just said like, hey, I just got totally, ramped up by this. Where did that come from?
Well, the origination is the problem that you're describing. Privacy and data in general is a personal decision and choice. How much you're willing to share with who and why and for what is individualistic, right? Your preferences are different than Shane's, which are different than mine. And that's the whole point, right? There is no one size fits all where some, Instagram just decide this is what we're doing for the, I don't know, billion people who use our product. There's no way they could get that right for all billion people, right? The problem is it's tailored to your individual life because it's ultimately your data and your choices. And so why can't you have the good without the bad? Like, why can't we have Instagram and not, ruin teenage girls' lives, right? Like, why can't we have both of those things? Like, why can't that be a world that we live in, right?
Yeah.
We have to have, like, the trade-off is that, like, it doesn't make sense. We can have both of them. And so this was something that I was frustrated about for about a decade, right? I've been working, my last business that I built is all in data also, doing B2B data for huge, like, Fortune 500 brands and things like that.
So you're familiar with how good and bad actors can manipulate this stuff and so on, because you saw it, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I built a lot of that stuff, right? Like, yeah, like that's just the reality is like that.
You're like, I've built some of the creepy stuff.
Yeah,
now I know how to block the creepy stuff.
Yeah.
We'll call you an ethical hacker of data, right?
Yes, an ethical hacker. There you go.
Yeah, I built some of it. We weren't trying to, but ultimately, no one's trying to. They're just trying to build a better product, right? Like, nobody realized that putting a like button on posts was going to be one of the most detrimental things we ever put on the internet. It wasn't like the engineers who sat out thinking like, this is how we're going to get them all, right? Like, sometimes it just happens as you build things.
And that is a lot of my belief of all of this stuff. I don't want to believe whether or not, we'll get into if you like Mark Zuckerberg or not, whatever, that doesn't really matter. I don't think he set out to create something that was going to be in front of Congress and was going to have all sorts of problems. And I don't think the person who built the like button is like, hey, if we build this, what we can do is ruin millions of lives with it. My guess is they were like, hey, I kind of wish my friends would just tell me if they liked it or didn't like it. What if we just put a thumbs up there? And they probably even said, let's not put a thumbs down, so it's not real negative. I'm sure that was whiteboarded in some marketing or product manager room, and it seemed like a great idea, and it is until, again, it is used for bad, right? Everything is good until it's used for bad.
As a wise man once said, with great power comes great responsibility, all right? So, and that comes in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, it just, they have a way of escalating and ramping up, and then we don't have a good recourse for changing it, right? And a lot of it's all driven by the same problem they talk about in the social dilemma, right? Ultimately, the business model is the problem, right? The business model, the underlying mechanics of how Facebook makes money is the reason why Facebook is so invidious, right? Their investors are invested in the profitability of the company. And the profitability of the company is driven by ad sales, monetizing users to sell ads. And so all of the pressure in their company at all times, right, is to sell more ads. It's not how do we create the greatest user experience, right? They just care about how do we get the most amount of eyeball time to get the most amount of ads sold, because that's how they make money as a business, right? And if you're a business, you got to make more money next year than you made last year, right? And so their investors and their business model is out of alignment with their user base. And that creates really all of that tension.
Well, and the challenge is it's a free-to-play situation. And that's the whole point of the social dilemma, which is you become the product, because we as a user base would say, hey, we want to have this. I don't want to pay $4 a month to have Facebook. Give it to me for free. And so Facebook says, we'll build it for free, and we'll build a really great product for free. But so that you can have it for free, we've got to make money, because this is costing us many billions of dollars to build it. So we've got to make money somewhere. So the only way we can make money is to basically sell you on the open market to advertisers. And they could switch that and say, no longer are we going to charge for advertising. But by the way, Shane and Mike, you two have Facebook. You got to pay $10.99 a month to have all your pictures stored, have your timeline, and be able to communicate with friends and family members and everything else. But the users would say, no, thank you. So it's a tough, it's a dilemma on all levels. And that's why TIKI is great, right? It's this idea of keeps it free, but allows you control of your data. Yeah.
Companies have made it seem like it's a black and white answer, right? It's either you pay a subscription, or all of your data is ours to monetize however we want in perpetuity, right? The reality is it's not, right? It's a scale, right? I'm okay with targeted ads from certain companies for certain reasons, but I'm not okay with you just selling my identity to other people who are then ultimately just going to get hacked and leak it all over the place, right? It's not all or nothing, right? It never had to be. They've tricked us into thinking like, because they wanted the one little checkbox that says I agree
That's
to
it. That's
all
what
of
it
these
is.
legal terms, right? They've
Yep.
made it seem like it's an on or off, but it never needed to be.
The
Like
checkbox is the signing your life to the signing your
Right.
life away to the devil. Is that one
Yeah,
little
and
checkbox?
and honestly, if Facebook gave me an option to say like what kind of ads would you want to see, I would probably go through with it, and I would say like, yeah, let me help you help me, because
Yeah.
I buy stuff off of ads all the time. I probably buy at least one thing a week off of some sort of ad, but it's just like, but majority of ads that I see are probably stuff that I don't want at all. So
So
it's just like,
now
would TIKI help with that, right? Which would TIKI also help put ads in front of me that I'm gonna fall in love with, that like I would want to see on a day-to-day basis? Can I control that, which I can't today?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately by selling your data and choosing who can buy your data, right? It's
Yep.
not like, again, companies don't want to spend money advertising to somebody who doesn't want their product, right? So by providing better data at lower cost that actually gives you what's called context-driven ads, right? You actually end up with higher conversion rates for the business, lower cost to spend, and the user actually enjoys it better because you're providing what you want, right? You don't end up with that stupid example of you bought a mattress and then you get an ad for the next 3 weeks about mattresses. Like, no, dude, I already bought that thing, right? Like, stop sending me more of this ad. You don't have that experience because you are now marketing and targeting people based on the context of their actions, not based on who they are.
Now Shane is going to get targeted by every advertiser in America because he just said every week I buy something on ads. He will become like the guinea pig for every company in America. So let's transition away from the business model into Nashville. Why did you decide, hey, I'm going to plant? Shane and I made a decision a year ago. We're going to plant our flag here in Nashville. The company was based in Seattle, and we said, hey, we're going to really grow in the Nashville area. And we have our reasons, but what was your reason for going from the Northeast here to Nashville and going, this is where I want TIKI to grow, and I want this to be a Tennessee-based company?
Yeah. Well, obviously what we're building is a pretty radically different approach to the world, right? It's very different, right? By design, right? I believe you got to build something new from the ground up to solve these types of problems that came from compounding solutions, right? And I come from a belief that if you want to make something new, you got to go somewhere new. It's kind of really the premise of it. It's hard to build an entirely new business on an entirely new business model in a place that is driven by decades, in the case of like New York and Boston, 100 years of doing business one way, right? This is a new world, new businesses, new companies, new everything. And Nashville is new and different. And it's creative, and people here are very supportive of pursuing crazy creative dreams. And so that's why we came here ultimately, was because it needed to be somewhere that wasn't San Francisco or Boston, right? We needed a new place for a new idea to build a new type of company that the world hadn't seen before, right? And so ultimately we chose Nashville because of the support and the creativity, and just, I've always had an affinity for musicians. And so it's just like, I like that spirit. I like that rambunctiousness. I think it's just a good place to do it.
Well, when we think about the people that are in like New York, they're in Boston, they're in San Francisco. I mean, there's so many ad-driven businesses. I guess I'd be curious to know if like, do a lot of the ad tech companies, do they see you as a threat, or do they see you as somebody that can enable them to have more context-based solutions that will help them target ads? Because like I look at it, kind of a catch-22 scenario where like some of them I feel like are going to love you, and some of them, to be fair, are going to put some things in your ears that you don't want to hear, and that to your point is probably a big driver to Nashville, right?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is it's probably both, right? And probably more grumpiness in the short term, and ultimately a lot of love in the long term, right? As you move to a whole new model, there's just a lot of pain changing things, right? If you're a big company, the last thing you want to do is change, right? That's the most expensive, most risky thing you can do is change. And so they will fight it tooth and nail. But ultimately we've seen this playbook time and time again, right? Like HubSpot, you can give Boston all the gruff they want, but they completely changed the inbound marketing by just saying, screw all of the corporations who spend all this money and time on expensive things and long tail contracts and custom solutions. We're going to build a self-service platform and go to the hundreds of millions of small businesses that are completely unserved. Same thing here, right? All the people who don't currently have data, don't use data. The most data they have is 4 charts that Facebook gives them for their ads. That's all they know about data. That's who you go to, right? We're not even. We're going to stay far away from all the legacy stuff. Let them do what they're going to do, right? They're going to move slow. They're going to spend lots of money. They're going to try and salvage whatever they can, and ultimately it'll all move and come around, right? We saw this in the TV streaming services market, right? For years, HBO refused to be on Roku, right? For years and years and years, and now Roku gets a cut of every time you stream anything via HBO on their platform, right? And they won by going around the system.
Hoorah. Ooh, freaking raw.
Yeah. So nothing, you didn't choose to go in the middle of nowhere, Canada or Montana. You chose Nashville. 66 and sunny in March probably had a little bit to do with it.
Yeah. The weather's nice.
No income tax, not a bad way to grow.
I didn't even know that when I got here, right? Somebody said that. I was like, oh, that's cool, right?
Yeah, that's a benefit.
We decided in November and then moved here December 1st. So I'm like, we just go for things, right? That's nice. Much more our style. So we just kind of decided and then showed up and then rented an office. But yeah, I mean, I've always liked it here.
What are growth plans for you out here, right? Like, are you hiring in Nashville? Are you hiring remote? Like, what's kind of your growth strategy? And like, I'd be curious to. I mean, obviously, we're still a recruiting agency, right? And so, like, on a day-to-day basis, that's what we're dealing with. So I'm curious as to like, what are your guys' growth strategies? And when you do ramp up and hire, like, what are you guys looking for?
We're looking for data people, mostly, and I say that pretty broad because it's pretty broad. But yeah, I mean, the goal is to hire everybody local as much as possible, right? Like we rented this office. I want to fill it up with people. Like, I'd love to be at 25, 30 people in this building by the end of next year, right? So the goal is to grow very fast, very, very much here. When the world is zigging, we like to zag, right? Everybody's going more remote, more, just more separated. We want to put everybody in a room together and build a new company, like a whole culture around it, and build a team and build a spirit, right? I think of ultimately what we're doing is more like an idea or a revolution than really a company, because it all hinges on whether or not people care enough to install an app and do something, right? People have to ultimately care for this to work. Like, we could make all the coolest software in the world and it wouldn't mean anything. We could sign up every business in the world to buy data, still wouldn't mean anything. All that matters is getting people to say, I actually care about this problem and I'm willing to install an app, right? Now, it's not a crazy ask of people. You don't have to, go marching off to war. You just need to install an app, but we still need people to want to take an action, right? And so I think that comes out of building like a center of gravity, a company culture that is uniquely TIKI, that, it just has this weird magnetic attractive force. And out of that, you build a whole new movement.
Yeah, well, you're speaking our language. I mean, that's what we did here. We felt the same way. For you, it's a revolution. For us, it's really build a family because of what we do. And so, yeah, our people we have a few still in Seattle and so on, but we really wanted to focus energies here and build something here, because for that same thing, if you want to do something big and special, and you're not big and special, you're not Google, and we're not a 25,000 person organization either. Like the heart of it has to be together. I felt the same way of like everyone's saying, hey, let's do everything remote. We can do everything remote. I disagree. I just don't. It's tough for me. I'm at home today because I have a sick kid, and this is like the least enjoyable thing. I can't stand being here, but I'm glad I can take care of my kid. But for me, it's like being in the office being able to go into Shane's office and talk to him, or going out and seeing someone, or chatting it up with JP or whoever it is really important to, I think, our growth as a company. And so I can see why you want the same thing. And
But it's
Nashville's
crazy, and it's also crazy. Like even when we did escape rooms, right? Like we did some escape room things as a culture and as a team, and it's crazy how just getting away for 3 hours and doing an escape room, got everyone jazzed up and motivated, and you could see tangible ROI from doing things as a group that you wouldn't otherwise have when you have the ebbs and flows of people that are remote. Because what's the most you can do? I mean, I guess you could play some online video games together or something, or watch something together. I don't know. Like to me, it's really difficult to build a remote culture, and I've always been curious about like how people do that, because I don't understand. I'm personally not capable of it.
Yeah, it's never been my strong suit for sure. I like people in the room getting to know one another, and I also think there's a time and a place, right? It's one thing when people are showing up because it's just like a job to them, right? And it's because you're employee 22,002, right? Like that's just it's a very different work dynamic and environment. And I could see how even a remote culture might be really beneficial for people like that, because then that's not what they're looking for in their lives. But when you join a small company or a startup, it's different, right? It's a very different feel. It's a very different vibe. It's a very different, the people you build the business with become your family. And so you need to like foster and grow that. I don't know how you would do it remotely, right? It's not like just a normal job.
Mm-hmm. The first 100 are different than the next 1,000. Yeah,
Yes.
I totally agree with that. And like I said, to me, it's a lot of that's the heart. That's where the heart comes from, and that's how it needs to be built. Like I can appreciate what you're doing, obviously love it, and I think you will start to see easier to attract talent to a place like Nashville because the no state income tax. So someone who makes 100 grand here versus 100 grand in Silicon Valley is a gigantic difference, or Chicago for that matter. Plus the property tax here being way lower, and so on. Things like that allow people to have more disposable income, have a better lifestyle with the same amount of money as they would get elsewhere. So
yeah, I think it was the Zappos guys who used to always talk about why they picked Las Vegas, and they used to, I believe they were the ones who would always say you can either go where everyone is or you can go where everyone wants to be. Right? If you want to build a big company fast, you need to hire 200 engineers in a year, right? You can't be in, as my business partner Shane would always say, you can't be in Topeka, Kansas, right? It doesn't work. You can't get 200 engineers in Topeka, Kansas in 1 year. It's impossible. So you have to be, there's certain places and certain things, and you need a deep enough pool, but you also need a place where people want to be, right? And I don't know, everyone I've ever talked to has always been like, I'd love to live in Nashville. So that's a good sign that, you can get people here.
Yep. No offense to the 50,000 listeners we have in Topeka, Kansas. Beautiful.
But you should be moving to Nashville. TIKI is hiring. I guess so is Next Level.
So come on over. All right, let me do a little bit of personal stuff. Normally we do it in the beginning. We'll do it here at the end. So you sound like someone very spontaneous. You like moving around. You picked up and moved in 1 week. We talk a lot about where would you want to travel when COVID restrictions really kind of ease up, which they have. Where is the place that you're like, bucket list, I'm going there as soon as I get a break from growing my killer company, Tiki?
St. Petersburg, maybe in Russia, or Istanbul in Turkey. Both are places that I've always really, really wanted to go, and I just haven't had a chance because I generally travel places like on weekends, and it's
a little difficult to get to Istanbul on a Friday.
Yeah, I mean, I once went to Taiwan for a weekend, and that was a whole thing.
But I won't even go to London for less than a week.
I went to New Delhi for 4 days. You know what I mean?
So you get it. Yeah.
Oh,
I was not expecting Russia to make the list for today.
I know it's a touchy subject right now, but everybody I know has said St. Petersburg is beautiful. The culture there is wonderful. They've always ranted and raved about how awesome it is. So I've always wanted to go. It's been, a thing I've always wanted to do. I always wanted to ride the Trans-Siberian Railway from start to finish. That was always something, go drink vodka on a train with some crazy Russians for 2 weeks. Sounded very fun. But again, who's got 2 weeks in their life to just sit on a train?
Yeah. So I've heard Istanbul. My sister has gone throughout most of Europe and Asia and said Istanbul was her favorite spot for sure. So I've heard amazing things. I've heard it can be a little bit dangerous, but still very, very cool.
I have some good friends who live there that I went to college with, and so it's always been something I wanted to do.
So you got a place to stay. All right. So what is favorite thing you have done? You've been here now for 3 months or so. Favorite thing you've experienced here in Nashville?
Oh, it's a good question. I got trapped in the elevator at Kid Rock's bar one night. That was funny. That was very silly. So that was pretty amusing. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't done too much. I've been in Nashville very many times. A long time.
You're in Midtown. Like, you haven't done anything in Midtown? Not a thing? Like, I'm waiting for some like losers or winners or like
it's just not my scene.
The Row. I don't know. Martin's Barbecue's over there. Martin's is dope.
I went to Martin's. Martin's was good. Yeah. It's just really not my scene, right? I'm here because our office is here. We really like the office. I'm much more, underground, low key type of really divey spots is more my style.
Got it. Have you been to Old Glory?
No, I have not been to Old Glory yet.
12 South. It's an underground. Yeah. It's underneath a factory building, right. Where
it's like in a boiler room, right?
Yeah, it's the boiler room bar. Yeah. It's pretty cool. Or if you go over to, I think it's called Flamingo, over by like Never Never and stuff. It's like this, and it's over by Jackalope Brewery. It's pretty cool. There's this street, and you would never expect anything to be there. You would walk down the street and never know there was a bar. Like, there's a coffee shop during the day, and then the coffee shop front ends up turning into like this coat check thing, and then you walk through the back and it's like this underground custom cocktail bar that's like super unique and really cool. And that whole street is like that. Like, you have like these random doors that have a number on it, and you open it, all of a sudden it's like this really cool spot on that entire strip. But you would never expect anything to be there.
Yeah, sounds very fun.
So if you want recommendations, go with Shane. In about 4 months here, we were driving, and he's like, "That's like the third best Ecuadorian restaurant I've been to around here." I'm like, "You've been to 3 Ecuadorian restaurants? That's outrageous." So he will know all the spots. I will say one thing to do, being from different land that I thought was outrageous, being in Nashville this weekend, or maybe even take your different people that you work with. Just go during this weather. Go to Radnor Lake State Park. Just walk around the lake for 20 minutes. It, to me, is mind-blowing that you're in the middle of a pretty large city. You're about 10 minutes from where you're at, maybe 15 minutes from where you're at, and you're in a state park that's gorgeous, and you'll see turtles and turkeys and everything else. It's awesome. That's a nice thing to do with this beautiful weather. So there's my pitch to get to the outdoors.
Can't bring your dog though. That's the only downside for me is like my little boy Riku can't go for a walk with me over at Radnor Lake. So
for parts of the lake, that is correct. There are a few spots.
The best parts of the lake can't walk with a dog. So
that is accurate, because some people don't clean up their dog poop, is my guess. So, all right. So last but not least, last question. You will go out on this and you will be judged. Hopefully every single person has listened to every single minute of this. Favorite movie of all time?
Man, you should have really given me these in advance so I could have
That's no
come
fun.
up with good answers. A favorite movie, I don't know. All of my favorite movies instantly just vanished from my brain.
Well, maybe you need to opt in for Google to remind you of your data of all the movies you've watched.
Yeah, I don't know.
While you think, I can share one that was pretty dope that I watched all weekend, man, which was like, it's not a movie, it's a TV series. Yellowstone, savage. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. I started it last Friday. I'm already almost at the end of season 3. I literally was up from like Friday until like 5 a.m. and then Saturday until 4 a.m. and then Sunday all day. I got through almost 3 seasons in like 3 days. It's awesome.
It's like he's going to work from home tomorrow.
Yeah. It's like if cowboys in Montana were like gangsters, and it's awesome.
All
right. Well,
just saying.
Shout out Yellowstone.
Yellowstone. It's awesome.
Yeah, I guess I don't know why. Certainly not my favorite movie of all time, but the best one I can think of off the top of my head is Requiem for a Dream. That's the one that comes to mind. I don't
what
know
a
why.
good movie. That's
Yeah,
so
it's a
few
great movie.
people.
It's not my
So few
favorite, but
people
it's definitely
here.
a fantastic movie.
Yes, so few people listening right now. We have roughly 60 million people every time that we host this, and very few will remember that movie or know what that movie is. That is an awesome movie. Requiem
Great
for a
movie.
Dream, fantastic.
I will be the first to admit I have never seen it. So
That's not surprising.
It's weird.
It is
good.
very weird. It's trippy. It's awesome. Requiem for a Dream is a fantastic movie from about 25 years ago. 20 years ago?
Probably something like that, you know.
Something
I am
like that.
What is it
dating
about?
myself a little right now.
what is it about? I'm
Yeah, a lot of drugs.
Yeah, there's drugs.
okay. We got Jared Leto and Jennifer Connelly in it.
Yeah.
That has to be a decent movie.
Yeah, Jared Leto back when he was like
Darren
a little bit off the
Aronofsky
edge, but still
is the
good.
director. Yeah.
All right, so we got Mike from Tiki. Again, how can people get connected with you? Because hopefully you're going to get flooded with people who want to join the Tiki revolution and really take back the internet with you.
Yeah.
Move to Nashville, or they're from Nashville and they're into data and they want to come work for Tiki. So how can people reach out to you, get connected with you, and so on?
Yeah, we're all over the internet. Just go to mytiki.com. You can find all our socials. You can join our Discord. You can, I'm sure my phone number's on there. You can text me, right? Like everything at Tiki is all open source. It's all public. It's all ultra transparent. So go to mytiki.com. You want to reach out to me directly or one of our coworkers, please do. We're
I promise
here to talk.
he won't sell your data. We know
I will
that.
definitely not sell your data, not without your consent.
With
So-
consent. With consent and a price tag. You're welcome.
So again, thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. An awesome tech company, Tiki, who just migrated here to Nashville. It's part of our really budding tech scene. We're so excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. I am going to sign up to be part. I don't know if your wait list is moving along, but I will be on the wait list. And if I can't get on the beta test, I am going to be the first person to jump on. Shane knows that's why I don't have Facebook. So I will absolutely love to see what kind of data and protect my data or get paid for it. I'm pretty jacked about that. I think that's awesome. So thank you for joining us, telling everyone about Tiki. This has been awesome. And go check out all the dive spots that Shane talked about and go to Radnor Lake State Park. So
Thank you, guys.
And hopefully we see you around town.
I'm sure you will.
All right, everyone. Thanks. See you.
Next day.